POW Recognition Day is a day to remember and recognize current and former prisoners of war missing in action with the military, and just in general, all branches, all services. It's important because it's a day those individuals, gentlemen, men, women, though they went through hell and back, either being a prisoner of war, especially those from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, they didn't always get the best treatment in the world. And it's just it's a chance for us to say thank you to them for going through everything they went through and surviving, be here today to give us our freedoms. So today we have artifacts from Norman Weiler. Norman Weiler, he was born a local guy here in Seward in 1921 and graduated from Seward High School in 1939. Significant about him is he was a member of a family which all members of that generation served. Norm here, he was in the Royal Canadian Air Force. So he had all intentions of joining the United States military, at the time the Army Air Corps. So there was a long line at the recruiter station in Lincoln, is what his diary says, and there was no line at the Royal Canadian Air Force recruiter. So he went over next door and joined the Royal Canadian Air Force and hitchhiked his way up to Ottawa, Canada in 1939 to join the Royal Canadians. And then he graduated from basic training up in Canada, in Calgary, Canada in 1941, and then passed his initial gunner's exams because he was a upper mid-turret gunner, as the British call it. So top turret of a Lancaster bomber, or Wellington as he was originally assigned, and then was sent over to England in 1942 to join the Battle of Britain in their bombing campaign against the Germans. Well, this is his jacket when he got back home in 1945 that the Canadians issued to him as a flight captain in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and it has his gunner's wings and flight wings on it, and his Royal Canadian Prisoner of War medals, and then on his shoulder there's the Canada tab, and then also underneath that USA, identifying him as an American volunteer in the Royal Canadian Air Force. We also have his German POW identification bracelet, which is very rare to find. A lot of those did not survive, and we're fortunate enough that Norm kept his this entire time, and identifies him as prisoner 110 at Stalag Luft 1. And then we also have his German issued mess kit, so his knife, fork, spoon, and can opener that has a nice German Nazi Waffenamp on it, indicating that was issued and made by the Germans. This is also one of Norm's other possessions, is a Royal Canadian Air Corps class photo from 1941 when he graduated from flight school up in Calgary. There wasn't a large number of Americans who went and volunteered in Canada in the Royal Canadian Air Force and then became prisoner of war and kept all their stuff. It's very rare, very unique grouping of stuff, and we're fortunate enough that the family kept all of their stuff, that is all Buzz and Bill's and Charlie's and Dwayne's stuff together as long as they had, and it gives a very, very unique glimpse into one generation's commitment and service to not only this country but also to the world, and protecting and saving the freedoms we now enjoy by volunteering for service both in America and in foreign countries. So the Nebraska National Guard Museum, we honor and commemorate our POW veterans every September 16th on National POW Day. And we have a small display set up front with Norm stuff in it, and then we also have another gentleman, Dale Carr, who did something very similar. He joined the Royal Canadian Air Force and then was picked up by the 8th Air Force once the U.S. joined the war, and was a P-51 fighter pilot. And he actually got shot down like 2 days before D-Day on a strafing run in Germany, and then spent the rest of the war as a POW. Similar situation to Mr. Weiler's here, but Mr. Carr, we have his uniform, and that's about it for him. This is just a much more larger collection with numerous artifacts, photos, letters, the original telegram that the Royal Canadian government sent Norm's mom and dad here in town, stating that he was shot down and missing after air operations, and then the follow-up telegram that also says that, hey, we found your son Norm, he's just a prisoner of war in a German POW camp, more information to follow. Then we also have Norm's flight logs and his war diary in a British war diary from the prisoner of war. Norm's also a little unique because he tried to escape 3 different times and was successful once. So it's in his diary, but Norm and another gentleman snuck out on a work detail. I was going to tend to the gardens that the Germans kept for the prisoners of war. So they grew their own potatoes, which is very common. Low maintenance crop, super easy to grow. So they snuck out, hid in the potato field. After the work detail left, they were able to sneak through a wooded area to a railroad track that had a siding with cars that had just come back from the Russian front. They found a freight car that was stamped or marked its destination going to Holland. So they jumped inside of it, and the train took off, went down the track a few miles, and then, surprise, a German army private who was also trying to escape the German army was jumped in the rail car and found Norm and his other compatriot trying to escape and turned him over to the Germans again. So not good luck there. They got caught. They went back to a couple different prison camps that time. Then Norm tried to escape again at another prison camp by tunneling. However, a little engineering dilemma. They didn't dig the tunnel quite deep enough below ground, and a wagon fell into the tunnel one day. So that ended that escape attempt number 2. Escape attempt number 3 was they got out, he ran a little ways, and they rounded him up within like an hour. After that, they threw him in solitary confinement for 10 days, which wasn't very pleasant from reading his diaries. He said it was really tough to do and really boring, and that was probably the worst punishment you can get, is being thrown in solitary. He was in the prison of war camp that was the Great Escape, the infamous escape of 200 people tried to escape, and only 3 of them made it back to England, and then 50 of them were executed by the Germans. He was in that camp, but he did not participate in that escape attempt. And then Norm, he was liberated in the early part of 1945, after they did the POW Death March. So the Germans were moving the prisoners of war around the country to try to evade the Allies getting a hold of them again, essentially. So he walked for basically March until the middle of May. They were always walking. So it was just a horrible winter to do it. Very nasty conditions, walked 16, 20, 30 miles a day with little rations and a little sleep, stopping in some barns along the way. But then he was actually liberated in early May of 1945, and he was back in Seward by Decoration Day, Memorial Day, 1945. And then in July was discharged from the Royal Canadian Air Corps, and then married his wife, Ione Herman. Not a lot of newer, younger folks, generations really have a grasp on what prisoners of war or the families of the missing go through. We just haven't, the last 20 years, we don't have a vast number of prisoners of war, vast numbers of missing like we had in previous conflicts, especially like World War II, Korea, Vietnam, where it wasn't unheard of to have soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, Navy folks go missing occasionally, just because of the nature of the fighting and just the brutality of it. But now it seems that doesn't happen. We're very fortunate that modern science, modern warfare, modern techniques, the missing or the unknown doesn't happen as much. And it's our duty as members of the military and also as citizens of the country to keep the memories of those who have suffered for us, especially prisoners of war and the families of those who are missing, alive, which is why we do POW MIA Day every year. And then we also have the Remembering the Fallen display here that lists our missing and our killed in action as well.